Hey, everyone. A quick note about this week's episodes. Our guest is Ken Kraus, a former U.S. Marine who was kidnapped, tortured, and sentenced to death in Iran in 1979. Now, obviously, he survived or we wouldn't have him as a guest, right? But Ken's going to discuss his ordeal during that time, which includes gun battles, beatings, torture, murder, and the resultant PTSD he experienced. Some might find portions of this three-part interview disturbing. Most of you won't. But I just wanted to give you a heads up just in case. Ken Kraus is a true American patriot and hero, and I'm honored to host him on the Game of Crimes. Hope you all enjoy this week's episodes.
Next thing I know is I hear gunfire. And I said, man, that's awful close. And you can hear, if you've been through firearms training, you can tell when it's a pistol, and then you can hear rifle. And then when the crack of that rifle, supersonic right away, and went boom, boom, boom. And then just as that came over, I realized who's got a rifle? Who's shooting us? We don't have rifles. We got shotguns. And then the radio cracks. They're coming over the wall. They're coming over the wall. Taking fire. Taking fire. Request permission to return fire. And if you got a fire outside the embassy, it's not inside. Inside, you don't have to really worry about it. But if any round's going to go outside the embassy, and you don't want a diplomatic, crisis, so you got to, requested permission. And I said, they're coming over the wall. And next thing you know, it's going from handgun to regular rifle fire to sustained automatic fire. I thought, this is a gunfight.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. I'm your host, Murph. I can't thank you folks enough for coming back every week. I don't know why you do, but I certainly do appreciate it. I think I do know, because I bring such studs and studettes on here. I mean, you hear stories here that you don't hear anywhere else. You might hear them somewhere else, but I prefer you hear them on Game of Crimes. And today is no different. The man you see on the screen there is a living legend. He's a true American patriot and an American combat hero. He's retired law enforcement. He checks all the boxes here to be on Game of Crimes. Usually I only ask that they check one box or, half a box. But our guest today is Ken Kraus. Ken, thank you so much for joining the show, brother.
Good morning, Steve. It's been my pleasure.
Well, I hope you say that afterwards. Ken here he's a former U.S. Marine in 1974, the same year I think that he and I both graduated high school. I think we're the same age, Ken. Yep. You may look a little better than me, but I can't help it. As I mentioned, combat veteran, you went in the Marine Corps Reserve. After that, you're a FAA air traffic controller, which we could certainly use. Newark could love to have you up there right now, I'm sure.
Not that place. No, thanks.
Worked for the Department of Energy as a nuclear SWAT officer, a private investigator in Atlanta, and then ended up with Roswell Police Department, which is one of the suburbs of Atlanta. You folks that have been on the show for a while, I was stationed in Atlanta twice with DEA, once in the HIDTA groups and the mobile enforcement team, and then later over the Atlanta Strike Force. Love Atlanta. 2 of my 4 kids live there with their families. My wife is starting to push me to go back up there. I can't believe she'd do that, but that's what wives do, right?
Yes.
But as you know, we have on most of our episodes, we have what we call a small town police blotter. I sent an article to Ken here, and he actually has a story better than the article I sent. And this is where we talk about stupid things that criminals do. And you know what? It's just not limited to Florida, because we have so many stupid ones here in Florida. It's all over the world. But just to give you our disclaimer, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. Now, we take the show very, very seriously, but we never want to miss a chance to have a good laugh at one of these dumbass criminals is what they are. So, Ken, if you would, brother, tell us about the guy you were telling me about just before we started here.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of it. Basically, the way we were set up, I got this call because I was over at the jail at the time interviewing a prisoner that we brought in. And over the radio, they asked for somebody to go into the lobby to take a report. And since I was already there and I was leaving, I said, sure, I'm glad to take a report. As I was walking out, the female jailer that runs it, she held up a little piece of paper that says, "Oh, you're going to love this one." And she looks over at the guy, right? I said, okay. So here he is and he introduces himself. Okay. And his name's Raymond Peterson. I said, okay, Mr. Peterson, how can I help you? and get through the details. I get his ID and I give it to the jailer to run him. I don't know who to deal with.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so he was saying, how can I help you? I said, well, I want to report a theft. And I said, okay, sir, where did this theft, you establish where the theft was? It might not even be our jurisdiction. And he says, oh, it happened at my house. I said, okay, where's your house? So I already feel I'm dealing with like an eighth grade education here. But I can also see by the way he's dressed, the tattoos, and basically the smell of his clothes, he's stoned. I said, okay, no big deal. So somebody stole something from him. Big deal. So he comes back. He's clean. I pretty much trust him for the most part. No one wants a warrant anyway. So I said, give me the 411 on this. What's going on? And he said, well, my roommate and his roommate's Ricky. So now we got Raymond and Ricky roommates. Okay. And he says, stole my stash. Your stash. What's your stash? My stash. Mustache? Oh. No, stash. I said, okay, let's get this right. Where do you live? And he gave me the address. Yep, sure. It's right around the corner from the police department. So I said, where is he now? He said, oh, I don't know. He took off. So what I did, I told radio, I said, look, I'm going over this address. I said, send me a uniform car over there, with me and meet me. I'm not going and walking into a nut house that I don't know anything's going on. Right. So we get there and he opens the door. He's got access to the keys. And I met another officer there, Brian Gilbert, by the way. And shout out to you, Brian. And he said, I said, look, you cleared the house. I'm going to sit here and talk with Ray now, because that's what he likes to be called, Ray. Mm-hmm. Okay, Ray. Off we go. So we're talking, and he's got this. Anyway, so Brian clears the house. Nobody else is there. Right in the middle of the room, now, this is 1998, by the way, summer of 98. And there's this giant steamador trunk, something you can hide yourself in. It's huge.
Mm-hmm. But there's a dead body in there.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And anyway, so Ray says, and this is where I keep my stash. He lifts up the lid of the trunk, and here's like a foot locker with the insert tray. And all these nice bags of marijuana are rolled up. And I look at this. Gilbert, get out here, bud. I call my back up and I said, hey, this is your stash. He goes, yes. Now, this is 1998. And he's got these things rolled up in little baggies. And you can see they're about one finger is $5. This is how cheap dope was back then. $5, $10 a dime bag. A lid, what he called a lid, was $15. And an ounce of marijuana back then was $20 for an ounce.
You're kidding.
God, it's like, oh my God, I didn't use it, but he's telling me. So he's going on and on. And now I realize that then he just retrograded from 8th grade to 5th grade. Uh-huh. I said, now I got it. So I sit there, I give Brian my 24. Now, signal 24 is mental. I'm dealing with somebody that's not all there. Okay. Not crazy, but just not something that you're going to have an adult, mature discussion with. So anyway, I said, okay, Ray, then he pulls out the tray and he's got 2 kilos sitting underneath it, already bricked out. He said, I haven't had a chance to roll them yet. I swear to God, Steve, and to your audience, I look around, I go, this has got to be candid camera, or this is a sting operation. FBI, or GBI is in here. This ain't right. This cannot happen. But I look at the dope and you can smell it, and he said, it's real weed. And I said, okay. I said, your roommate, Tricky Ricky. Where's Ricky? And he said, I don't know. He took off. And I said, what makes you think he stole this? I said, and we go through the questions, where'd you get it? And et cetera, because we're going to get around to that. And I queue up and I said, give me a supervisor over here, a Sierra unit. I said, you ain't going to believe this one. So we get the supervisor, on the starts on his way over, because I don't want to deal with all this dope. There's going to be a lot of evidence, a lot of paperwork. So we get over there. And he's sitting there and says, yeah. And he's telling me how he was rolling it. And he was going to make a deal with Ricky, because Ricky doesn't deal with dope. But one of his friends wanted some. And I mean dope, I mean the grass. Okay. Mm-hmm. I wasn't in narcotics. I did everything but narcotics. Yeah. Anyway, I can't stand on people. I can't get in their head. Point being is that, so he said, no, he does the pills and the hard stuff. And I said, the pills and the hard stuff? What are you talking about? Oh, he has his own stash in the other bedroom. And I look at Gilbert and I go, Brian, get in there. And he goes, where's he keep it? What kind of a stash he got? And this guy just opens up like crazy. He goes, oh, they're in shoe boxes up on the top of the shelf. Brian goes in and he grabs one down. He's hoping it's not booby trapped, right? And he lifts up. Here it is. Bags and bags of pills upon pills. And these are old pills. These are the old Quaaludes. These are old Black Beauties. These are, you can't even find anymore on the market. Today it's all fentanyl. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he's looking at this. He walks out with the box, the shoe box, shows it to me. I think, oh yeah, that's Ricky's stash. All right. So the whole moan and groan problem was that Ricky had taken some powdered dope or whatever, the grass, and was going to trade it out or sell it to somebody new and bring the money back. But he took more than what he should. So you got a pissing contest between the two boyfriends here. All right. Supervisor shows up. I tell him what I got. He starts an 800 unit, which is our undercover narcotics. So they don't want any part of this. He goes, no, you guys want to see this. This is plenty big enough for your ass to take care of. This guy's got no clue. He's got uniformed officers in front of him. And I mean, I'm in a shirt similar to this one, but still badge gun. And I still got my Batman belt on. And I'm sitting here and I said, okay, now, when did you get this stuff? Just the fair basics, because I know the narcotics guys are on their way. They're going to have a field day with this one. In the meantime, supervisor's at the door. Guess who walks in?
Here comes your
Ricky. Ricky walks in. Now, you got police cars out front, right? Uniformed officers standing in your doorway, holding your dope. And all he's going is Ray Ray okay? Is Ray Ray okay? He's thinking that maybe something happened to him and we were there for a medical emergency or something. Is he okay? He goes, yeah, how you doing? Let me see your ID. Pat your ass down. Have a seat on the couch here. So, sitting there, and then they started going at each other. We had to separate them in the room because one was bitching at the other about who stole it. I didn't steal it. Well, where's the money? Back and forth. And when I'm sitting there and saying, man, I wish we would have had body cams back then. It would have been hilarious. Hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
So the 800 guys, our narcotics guys came up. We code 10, arrest their ass. They take them over to jail. And basically, they never even went to trial with this. Are you out of your mind? How do you go to trial with like this? They went and they did all the extra work. The narcotics guys went and got the search warrant, tore the house apart, got tons. Yeah. And then supposedly we heard through the grapevine that they rolled over on their sources, which one source, when we were looking at later on, they did a search warrant, saw that a lot of these pills that were there was one of Vicodin, a bottle like this with over 300 tabs of Vicodin, but it was stolen out of a pharmacy in Memphis. So all that came back to us. We got a letter of accolades and things like that. But the joke was, I just said, somebody stole my stash. And
people do the stupidest things, don't they?
I'm telling you, you can read the report. You won't believe it.
Oh, my gosh. I've got a Patreon subscriber channel, and one of the episodes every month is You Can't Make This Crap Up.
You can't, sir.
Stupid criminals. It's an hour's worth of stupid criminals from around the world, and there's never a shortage of material. Unbelievable.
You think that you're going to the police department to report the guy stole your dope.
You know what? That's such a good story. I'm not even going to read mine. I'll save the Florida nut for another time. But thank you for sharing that, man. That was much better than the one I sent you.
I think it was July of '98. We can look it up for you. We still got it on. It's got to be on record somewhere.
Yeah, I bet. I'd probably find it online. You can find everything else online now. Just really quickly, the way I met Kevin here is we have a mutual friend named Eddie Molina, who you've heard me talk about several times here on the show. Eddie calls me all the time texts me. He's been a big supporter of DEA Narcos. He's been a big supporter of Game of Crimes. He's recommended several great guests. He introduced me actually to Constance Payne, who is an actress there in Atlanta, who actually helped write Ken's book. Now, his book, we want to get it out here now, it's titled Ken Kraus, Kraus, A Marine Endured Hell, the first Marine held hostage in Iran during the Iranian hostage crisis in 1979. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about that in today and tomorrow's episodes. But I reached out to Constance. She made a contact with Ken, didn't even hesitate to say that, yes, he by all means would be on the show. And if you guys remember here, I had Scott Payne on a couple weeks ago, retired FBI agent that worked undercover against some of the white supremacist groups, against the outlaw motorcycles gangs. And if you remember when Morgan used to be my co-host on here, I had a saying that we used at every show, and that saying was, get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. And it's because of the adventures of what our guests go through. And this is one of those shows, I'm telling you. This is one that, and I'll be honest with you, Ken, there's a couple of places I read in your book where I had to get tissues out and dry my eyes a little bit, especially when you got back to the United States.
A lot of people say that.
We'll talk about that when we get to it. Just before we do, let's just quickly talk about, where'd you grow up? What were your family dynamics, brothers and sisters, that kind of thing?
I'm from Jersey. I'm a Joe Pesci version of the Jersey side of him. My dad and his brothers were in the military. My dad's proudly served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Wow.
And then when he came home, he was stationed at the Brooklyn Navy Yard up North Jersey in New York. And then when so that's where I was born and raised, up there for the most part. But by the time I was first grade, they closed the Brooklyn Navy Yard, were shutting it down. They transferred him down to Philadelphia, southern part. So basically I grew up in South Jersey, south of Trenton. And suburb of Philadelphia, farmland for the most part. And went to Catholic school. My mom and dad were both immigrants, or born, they're first generation here. So my dad comes from Germany. My mom comes from Ireland. So best of both worlds there, I guess.
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
So I was lucky enough to go through parochial school, get a good background education elementary wise. And then for the most part, I started in the private school. I had a public school for high school. But I got a wrestling scholarship to go to Valley Forge Military Academy, where they made that movie Taps. They just changed the name of it to Bunker Hill, but it was actually 1979 when they shot the movie. It was there at Valley Forge Military Academy. And I graduated in 1974, and I had a congressional appointment to Annapolis. I mean, that was my dream, is that I wanted to eventually be a Navy SEAL team leader. I wanted to leave some of the best combat warriors known to man at the time, and that was Navy SEALs. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I was going to be.
Yeah.
But evidently, long story short, I had a heart murmur, and I had to get a medical waiver. Now, at the time, Vietnam was still going, and it was winding down, but it was still in progress. So I'm a Vietnam era veteran, but I never went over to Vietnam. And at that time, 74, so they were very, very picky. And I was waited and waited and waited, and they said, look, here's the way it goes. We don't look and draw on people that are on waivers per se. So, I mean, you just wait forever. They had too many people that are healthy that they didn't have to. Because being a heart, with the heart murmur or something like that, you can't, it's almost washed me out. It broke my heart because you can't really dive as deep as they dive, jump out of airplanes. It affects your overall health. So, I mean, that just crushed me. And it was just after 1973, the Yom Kippur War that was going on over in Israel. And the Arab OPEC folks closed up the oil valve on us. And we went from 65 cents a gallon to like $2.65 a gallon. And it crushed the economy. We couldn't find jobs anywhere. I was looking around, and I know it's been September. It's getting in my birthday. And I said, no, what are you going to be doing? He said, hey, I went downtown to the AFI station and sat down. And it just happened to be a lunchtime for the most part. And the only ones that was open at the time was the Marine Corps office. Every day of the week, Army, Navy, Marine, Air Force, they took a day where the other guys could go out to lunch, and you had to see somebody there for the overall. So basically, he sat me down. We started talking, and I said, no, I'm really interested in Navy, et cetera. I was going to find something else to do or be in the Navy. I can still go on to be a SEAL, just probably not going to be a commander or anything at that point. Anyway, so I don't know what really got into me or crawled up my head. And so next thing you know, we're sitting there talking, and I see him in the blues, and he owns stories and this and that. And the next thing is that I'm signing a contract, and I'm waving my hand, and I'm off to boot camp. So, yeah, I mean, I got shanghaied, man. I really did.
I want to back up just a second. When you were in high school and then at the military academy, you were involved in a variety of sports, right?
Yes, sir. I varsity in 3 letters.
And what are sports?
Oh, that wrestling. It's football and baseball.
But you were into boxing, judo.
Well, they had. We didn't have teams at that time, but we had the clubs. And they initiated me, there, because later on in the Marine Corps, I went on to go ahead and get my black belt. As a matter of fact, I won the All-Marine Judo Championship in 1978 at 61 kilos. And at the time, I had just passed all my tests and got signed off to get my Shodan, my black belt. But it has to go through academies, and some other black belts have to sign off on it. So when the actual tournament came around for the All-Marine Judo, I was still only a 3rd degree brown belt. So I choked my way through and beat everybody's ass, and I took first place. At that time, it was at Marine Corps Air Station, Cherry Point, North Carolina. At 61 kilos, I was the first brown belt to ever win any of the championships there.
So, what's that? That's about 130-something pounds?
132 pounds.
Wow. So how tall are you?
5'6".
Okay. Well, I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner. I'm looking, I think, at a freaking fire plug here, a little bulldog. Because I read about some of your, you didn't back down from too many encounters, did you?
And see, I lost my dad in 1972 to cancer, and it really affected me bad. It broke my heart and ripped my heart out. I mean, my mom didn't know what to do. She never remarried, and I got 3 sisters, and at that time they were getting old. They were all 2 years older than me. They were getting married, moving out. So it was just my mom, my little sister, and I. And being on the streets of Philadelphia, you get picked on a lot. And going to private schools, that's where they start to. You get on the bus and you're in public school, and I got bullied a lot. And guys would they take your lunch and steal your lunch. So then my mom would give me lunch money. They'd have come over, force you to give up either your lunch money or they didn't do their homework assignment or something like that. They want to copy yours. And you just get tired and fed up with it. Then you start to fight back. You don't always win every fight, but you know that every time they come looking for something, they're going to get a fight. It's not going to be a freebie. Go find somebody else that won't fight back because this one will. And I just grew up fighting. I just grew up scrapping.
I respect that. All right. So now you're in the Marine Corps. This is 1974, right?
October 74, I signed up because my birthday's in September and I wanted to get through Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And the recruiter said, hey, you can go on a 90-day delayed entry and we'll see you in January, February. I said, yeah, sign up now. And he goes, make sure you come back because we're going to hunt you down. You're going to be U.S. government property as soon as you sign and get an oath certified. So don't think you're going to get out of it. And he said, the only thing that's going to keep you out of it is death. I said, okay, I'll try to keep myself alive. That and to stay out of prison for fighting, you know what I mean? Anyway, so my contract says 1974. That's when my start of enlistment. I had to go to boot camp until I think almost February.
I was reading that you took the test and you did exceptionally well on it, right?
It's not because, yes, sir. It wasn't because I was really smart. I didn't know how to take tests well. When you get 4 questions, 4 answers, and 2 of them are obviously crazy and that don't belong there, you can just bounce through them. And basically, when they looked at the ASVAB score, the recruiter said, damn, kid, you can be just about anything you wanted to be. I said, well, I don't want to be a jet pilot. I don't want to do this. Here's what I wanted to do. And then that's why I said, I talked with a friend of mine whose brother was in Vietnam at the time. And it said that, hey, here's where it's going to go when you go in the Navy, because he was in the Navy. But and I had already thought that I was going to go and sign the papers in the Navy, but got shanghaied by the Marine Corps. And when I went back home, I was going to tell him, here's what's going to happen. And I decided to go to the Marine Corps, and I already signed the paperwork. And he said, make sure, he said, that you sign, you want to go to San Diego. You want to be a Hollywood Marine. I said, what's the difference? I said, well, Paris Island, and he described what it was like. He says, sand fleas, chiggers. You're out on an island where, you can't get off. And he just went on and on how hot and nasty and everything it was. I said, well, what's the difference in San Diego? And he says, well, you'll be a Hollywood Marine. He said, you go through the same training, get everything done, but the weather's nicer out there. The food's nicer out there. And they're just not as mean or as sarcastic, or it's just a little bit different. It's just got to be tough enough as it is. The toughest thing is psychologically is that you're sitting out there wherever you are in either Edson Range or Camp Pendleton, or even at the grinder at San Diego at the recruit depot. Mm-hmm. And he says, you see that Freedom plane coming in every day to the airport and take it off. And it just gives you a lot of hope that you're eventually going to get out of that hell someday after, being there for, 90 days or so. So
keeps you motivated.
You remember your good times in boot camp. And that's why when you read the book, you'll start to see and what I learned in boot camp and how I applied it in front of the end of the book in the combat section of it.
Yeah. So what MOS did you select when you joined the Marine Corps?
7041 was airfield operations, where you could go into radar or air traffic control afterwards, depending on, at the time, you'd have been sent overseas with a fighter squadron or a bomber squadron in the Marine Corps, or maybe even if your squadron at the time, we were at A4s and F4s, 4Js at that time. Mm-hmm. But now that they were winding Vietnam down, and for the most part, it says, well, we're going to put you in the operations field, which is fine. It's you'll still be going to, Memphis, Millington, Tennessee. You're still going to be learning how to, you got to get your control tower operator's license, so you can actually talk to the birds, because a lot of times the Marine Corps air stations are so close to regular international lanes that we're always interfacing with them, and having to put our jets up through the jet stream and up through the flight lines where the other ones were coming in. So it's between the military guys and the regular FAA that we don't bounce bumpers together in the sky.
And where'd you get stationed at?
It's a funny thing you say that, because I wanted to stay away from Paris Island, right, in Beaufort, South Carolina. So guess where my first duty station was? Marine Corps Air Station, Beaufort, South Carolina, 3 miles away from Paris Island. And I said, this place sucked. It was back in, that was 1975. And I said, this place is just a swamp. There's nothing there. It's horrible. There was 6 F-4 squadrons, an A-4 squadron, and some leftover birds that I couldn't even tell you what they were from Korea vintage or Vietnam. And actually, some of the 4Js that they had actually had patch holes from being in Vietnam. And the pilots are still flying them. The airframe's good. I guess all they got to do is just keep the avionics and the wings and like that on it. But the most important thing, of course, in any jet is the ejection seat. You always want that ejection seat to work. That's the last piece of material in a bird you want to let you down.
You hope you never have to use it, but you like having it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you do your time there, and you're coming up on the end of your contract, right?
Yes, sir. Just about 77, 78. And I'm thinking, when I re-enlist, where do I want to go? And at the time, really not. Jimmy Carter was his administration was there. Basically, I had to say, there's a chance here you can re-enlist and apply for embassy duty, either embassy duty or the drill field. Now, if you want to, continue to be in the Marine Corps and make a career out of it, those are really good choices to make. They're hard to get into. They're hard to excel at. I said, but go to the drill field and you have that on your record, drill instructor for embassy guard duty. It says that's a feather in your cap. So not being able to be a SEAL team leader and, have some other desires and goals that I could never, ever accomplish, I said, let's take a look at the drill field. And I did. I talked to a couple of drill instructors, went over to Paris Island. I go, not for me. No. And then I talked with one of our gunnery sergeants had just come in and got off of embassy duty. And he explained it to me, and I went in and did some research on it. So I thought, this is great. This is fun. A lot, I get to travel around the world to places I would never normally in the Marine Corps to go to and meet unique people and study their culture and, if necessary, kill them at times. But otherwise, you can be a diplomat and get along with them. And I'm a history buff. So when I found out that it depends on where you actually graduate. If you graduate from the academy, the MSG, Marine Security Guard Battalion, the higher you graduate in your number, the better chances you are of being able to pick your embassies or consulates all over the world. I go, well, taking tests, and that's what I'm best at. Okay, so we can do it. So I applied for it, and it's a hard prerequisite to get into because you have to have almost perfect pro and con records. You have to have everybody, his brother and his dog, including your commanding officer, write letters for you and go to bat for you. There's something like maybe 500 people for every class of about maybe 60 or 70. And out of 60 or 70, we probably graduate 2-3 dozen, big dropout rate. And of course, if you drop out and if after you drop out, you are now still under contract, the Marine Corps, they don't have to send you back to your regular MOS. You are at their mercy, or they can send you wherever you want. So, let's put your chips out there in your life and rolling crap dice and seeing just how far you're going to go. So
I can't imagine, and I know that's having been stationed in an embassy in South America for a few years, got to be really close friends with all the Marine guards there at the base. Used to play football on the weekends and different things. Spent a lot of time at the Marine House and some of their parties. Whew.
Oh yeah,
some of them were hard. Some of them were hard to get home from, but thankfully my wife didn't drink, so I had a designated driver. But to select that MOS is an honor. And what were they doing that they just didn't follow through? Did they screw up in training? That's a coveted position within the Marine Corps.
We have pop tests and quizzes all the time. And also, you have to learn about customs and courtesies, diplomatic procedures, and your background has to be impeccable. Some guys that come in there, they found out they had either lied or weren't completely truthful. Your credit has to be perfect. Your health has to be perfect. Because once you get to a third world country or something, they don't want to have to worry about you being picked on by other intelligence agencies. Because everybody at the embassy is a target. If you don't think that when people talk about the intelligence agencies, all the alphabet agencies, everybody in the world has spies, and everybody spies on everybody, friends, enemies, whatever. And they work out of embassies and consulates. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
Learning how that operates along with the physical, you just got to be able to shoot well. You have to do everything that every Marine does, plus what the State Department dishes out and their curriculum too. So some of them don't want to go. Some of them just ring the bell and quit. They decide not to, and other ones that they just don't make it. The firing range alone, with the several different type of weapons that you have to qualify with, is difficult. Having to score at first 70, then 75, then about the second month you're there, you have to score 85 or higher on every written test. If you don't, you get one shot to do it again. Otherwise, they can your ass.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're serious. So
you have to be able to just to go out. One thing is they have to be able to, when they do your background check, it's very important to be able to pass the criteria for a top secret or higher security clearance, because you're going to be dealing with diplomatic missions. You're going to be sitting and talking and bodyguarding ambassadors and heads of state. You're going to hear and see things similar to what the Secret Service guys do, and you can never talk about it, never bring it up that it even happened. You can't confirm, you can't deny. And if you think that that's not special and they can't give you can't do that passing a polygraph, another thing that'll eject you out.
Yep. Well, plus you have to patrol the embassies and see if classified documents are being left out at nighttime. I might have got zinged for that.
There's so much of it, it's not funny. It's constantly being aware and observing all the time. You just don't stand there like they show you in some of the movies with your thumb in your butt and your dress blues. No.
Yeah.
The dress blues are fine, and that's all for tradition. But most of us hardly ever wore dress blues. I don't think I had mine on 3 times the whole time I was in embassy duty. But depends where you go. I mean, you go to a place like Beirut or Israel or something, you're getting shot at. No, you're going to be in BDUs, battle dress uniform, camis, or whatever you want to call them back then.
So a lot of them. Good. I was going to say, what was your first post then overseas as a Marine security guard?
Nicosia, Cyprus. Beautiful place.
And how did you pick that? Or did you get to pick it?
No, I picked mine. I graduated 4th out of my class. That's the best one that I could get. Basically, you go in, you put in for 36 months. You have to have 36 to 40 months left before you can even apply when you graduate. So when you're done, what happens is the State Department dictates whether you go to a luxury or a hardship post. Because if it was left up to the Marine Corps, they'd all be luxury posts. So basically, you got the Marine Security Guard Battalion. The MSG Battalion is set up in 5 companies, A, B, C, right through the alphabet. And like A is Europe, B is Middle East, C is Africa, things like that. Nicosia came under A company. It's a little Greek island just south of Turkey and west of Israel. And what makes it a difficult, or what they say hardship post, was that 1970, it split between in 1974, the Greeks and the Turks went at it in a short 2-week war. Now the trouble with that is that they're both NATO, kind of like Argentina and the Brits were back in the Falkland Island Wars. You got 2 buddies, fighting over the same piece of land there, and made it very politically, tough position to have to make decisions. Anyway, so he had a green line in between. And we had all these different contingents to keep the Greeks and Turks away from each other. Canadian contingent, Danish, German, they call them the DanCon, the CanCon, whatever. And they're like little camps, and they just, control the roads. Basically, UN peacekeeping, forces. And otherwise, it was a beautiful island. I mean, we were one of the few people we had a black passport, so we could go from one side to the Turkish side and Greek side back. And it was biblical. I mean, if you look at like biblical history, which I do, you can see that St. Paul had gone through there and made several tours. There's been castles left over from the Crusades. It was very unique. So I was having, a really good time. But I guess I got bored because with Tehran going on and the Shah of Iran, historically, you're looking at Persia. Ancient Persia, Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, all the great, they're all through the Bibles. So they were asking for, She headquarters in the Marine Corps asked for some volunteers from what they call fat embassies, guys that didn't have a threat. Our threat level in Cyprus was very low at the time for terrorists or anything else. We had 2 really big bases down there that the Brits run. Akrotiri and Episcopi, these 2 bases. One's a naval base that carried SAS or SBS, and the Air Force version SAS. So you got 2 of the baddest asses camps down there. So I guess a lot of terrorists. Not a good place to do their training either. So we were happy to go out and train with them. whatever. So when they asked for volunteers, they asked how many Nicosia could give up, Cyprus, and they said one. I volunteered. I said, yeah, it'd be nice. I walked in and talked to the gunny. I told him my background, and he just said, well, the other guys are happy here with their girlfriends and this and that. You're a fairly newcomer. You're going, Marine. And off I went for supposedly supposed to be a 90-day TAD, temporary additional duty, right? But with TAD, we call it traveling around drunk. Same thing to a Marine. So I was supposed to be over there for 90 days and then come back with my T-shirt and everything else that I was over in Persia for a while. Yeah, it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go.
When was that you went to Tehran?
1978.
And was that early 78? Well, it had to be early.
No, it was right around my birthday, because I was only in Cyprus for like 2 months after I won the All-Marine Judo Championship. And then when I went to embassy school, graduated there, and said, well, you're off to Nicosia. So I was in Nicosia for maybe 10 weeks, maybe 2 months. And the request to go to Tehran to bolster those there. You had all these different, I'd say, private companies, American companies who vested interest, like Ross Perot, EDS, and Bell and Howell, and Sikorsky, and a bunch of them. And they were asking the Americans to, look, the country's getting really out of hand, and we're going to bring it down to about a skeleton level at the embassy, but for security reasons. And I said, I get it. But that didn't stop them from having all the people that needed to get out of there and be processed out, and Americans to come home. So it put a lot of stress on them. That's why they needed it. So they normally have about 15 is the table of organization for that embassy. But they brought 6 more in. So basically there was 19 of us, 19 Marines, and 2 supervisors, a staff sergeant and a gunnery sergeant. So basically 20 Marines to guard a 27-man compound. Impossible.
Yeah, it's even in Colombia with the Marine Guard detachment there, it wasn't enough to protect the embassy. It wasn't. Yeah, I guess it was high threat. It was considered hardship because of the narcotics traffickers and the insurgent groups there. Yeah, but there just still wasn't enough people to guard a place that big.
No, Steve, and we're the cops. We're the only ones really at the most time. The standard policy procedures were if everything's from the outside gate or whatever you have, the wall, on the inside is American territory, supposedly sovereign territory.
Right.
What a fallacy that is. And then everything on the outside belongs to the host country, and they're supposed to protect that. Now, somebody didn't read the small print on that contract either. But and these are diplomatic missions. They're not fire bases. They're not, unless you go to Beirut or Baghdad or if Afghanistan. Yeah, then they're a little bit different. But once you start bombing and you turn the place into a war-torn territory, other than that, it's a mission. It's a diplomatic mission, and you're not meant to turn that into a combat zone. It's just not going to be. It's just not going to be done. Now, that being said, shortly after terrorism took a new rise in 78 and 79, then they started hardening these places and actually padlocking the gates and putting barriers and stuff up. But prior to that, they were open soft targets.
Yeah.
And you're right. There was never enough of us constantly watching all the time, not just for violence against the United States, but subterfuge and the spies were always looking at us. Got to remember, this is the late 70s. For people that don't remember, the Iron Curtain was still intact. Okay, Berlin, Germany was 2 separate countries. Right. The countries you're looking at now, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, you're looking at Poland, you're looking at Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria. They were all Soviet satellites behind the Iron Curtain with their machine guns pointing in at the people, not out to defend them. Not until Reagan got in there in 89 and Mr. Gorbachev tear down this friggin' wall. Then that's not that many years ago, Steve. And people don't realize that. You still think, and then now you have all the independent countries. Yeah, it wasn't like that when I was in. So we were NATO facing Warsaw Pact countries. We just sit there and stare at each other at the Fulda Gap in Germany and just waiting all the time. Somebody button over somebody's airspace. Very similar to the armistice that's North and South Korea. That was a never declared war. It's only an armistice. They can start fighting again tomorrow morning, and you're not going to break any treaty. There's no treaty there. And there's nothing but a minefield and a bunch of towers, barbed wire, staring at each other. And you got to live and work around that. same things as that all the time in the embassies. Whatever country you went to, especially if it was a communist country, you always had people following you, talking to you, trying to set you up all the time. It was not fun to be in communist, led countries or countries that are not friendly to America. It's not fun at all. And you just don't say, yeah, I'm going to go out and have a good time. Maybe in Paris or Stockholm or something, but you got to watch it all the time. Intel and counter intel is a shadow of both shoulders all the time.
Yep. So let's get around to Valentine's Day of 1979. What were you doing that morning?
We had gone on a 24-hour alert, and for whatever reason, the State Department, somebody in their great wisdom up there, the dimwits, had taken away and ordered our M16s to be taken away from us, and they rearmed us with shotguns. I can't tell you how stupid that was. Until this day, we're still talking about it. Look, we're going to try to defend 27 acres with outside around the whole area is high-rise apartment complexes. I said, shotguns are good. And on a good day with a great shot, maybe you got a 50 yards. If you got a good slug, rifled slug. Other than that, you're 30 yards, you're in, and that's about all you can do. I said, what the hell was this? So we already knew something was up. There had been a lot of demonstrations and people that were anti-Shah and what they call the Fedayeen Kalk, which you're going to start hearing about more of them soon. Mark my words on this day.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting ready to take on the Democratic mayor position up there in New York. Crazy. You guys don't know what you're doing. But anyway, so it's nuts. Oh, God. Anyway, so we were on 24-hour alert and we were just coming down, going to be downgraded on that. And guys would drive by, shoot up the embassy wall, throw Molotov cocktails over top, no direct assault. But that morning I had gotten off and given my brief to the guards that relieved me. Now, the back end of the embassy where I was called the Caravanserai Restaurant. And it was very important because it was one of the few places that several people did not have to go all the way to the front gate to come through. You had to have special clearance to come through, but you could. And it was good because you could go through and if we checked you out, you could get in and out of the embassy. But it was also very restricted for those that didn't. So it was critical that back then we didn't have half the tech we had today, the cameras, and there's no Wi-Fi. I remember there's no .coms. None of this was around. But anyway, I just gotten off of duty and I went back to the Marine house and there was something weird. I had breakfast at the restaurant and I talked with one of the waiters there, a friend of mine, Menacci. You read about him in the book. So sad. Wow. Anyway, and as I got off, I said, we all realized there was something wrong with the day. It was ice cold up in the mountains and near Russia is what we are in the Ellsberg Mountains. And we realized that the Farsi guards, the local law enforcement, was not at their posts, just outside the embassy wall from the street. It's like our GSA uniform police up there in all the embassies. They take care of the embassies outside. And I said, they weren't there. So we knew, I just had a gut feeling. I said, is this kind of holiday or, what's going on? And then it was about 8:00 in the morning, about 2 hours later, just getting back to my Marine house. I'm beat. And next thing I know is I hear gunfire. And then I said, man, that's awful damn close, and you can hear, if you've been through firearms training, you can tell when it's a pistol and then you can hear rifle. And then when the crack of that rifle, supersonic, right away, and went boom, boom, boom. And then just as that came over, I realized who's got a rifle? So who's shooting it? We don't have rifles. We got shotguns. Totally different news. And then the radio cracks. They're coming over the wall. Taking fire. Request permission to return fire. If you got to fire outside the embassy, inside you don't have to really worry about it. But if any round's going to go outside the embassy, and you don't want a diplomatic, crisis, so you got to, request permission. That crap. Anyway, the radio's busted, and I said they're coming over the wall, and next thing you know, it's going from handgun to regular rifle fire to sustained automatic fire. I thought this is a gunfight. This ain't no drill. So basically, protocol 1 is respond to the chancery, get hold of the ambassador and the secret squirrels that work there, because there's a lot of people with alphabet agencies that Don't need to be captured, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Then comes the classified material and et cetera, all the way down the protocol. But I couldn't get across that open ground. And there's like almost a soccer field is almost like 300 yards. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, there's no way that's suicide. The enemy that we're attacking were the Fedayeen Calc, and they had taken the high-rise apartment complexes in the area up and around the embassy and just firing randomly into the ground. They didn't care who they hit, our people, their people, they didn't care. And they're keeping our heads down. And it was tactic that works, you know. I mean, it's a cover fire and move and shoot. So they were able to come over the wall, and then I had to make a decision. I went back to the Caravanserai restaurant, got hold of the two Marines that were there, Jackie Nohos and Stanley Lochek. And I said, okay, what do we got here, guys? And said, we don't know. Then we could hear Farsi over the radio, over our Motorola bricks. They've taken post 1, the main gate, overrun that. We don't know who's hurt, dead, wounded, or whatever. But now that they got the push to talk down, our communications is compromised. So basically I said, look, we have the two areas here is the restaurant and the little PX exchange. And he said, the place is full of people in there. They're working, they're shopping. He said, go in there, get every one of them out and get them over here into the Caravanserai restaurant. I said, we're going to hunker down here, border up. I said, it's the most ballistically protective place that we have. Plus we can watch the gate here. We can secure this gate and we got cover fire for this gate. Best you could do. So as the other two Marines did that, I went in and tried to get through on the landline and call post 1 and let them know where we were. Line's dead. So we're incommunicado. And now we get these, what they call foreign service local employees, FLE, FSLEs. And we give it in and we're looking at them. So when I reference that in my book or in the interview here, when I say the 22 Americans, they're not all Americans. They're Filipinos, they're Iranians, they're Pakistanis, they're a bunch of mixed people together. So without I have to go through that and reiterate, just say the other 22 Americans. And we hunkered down in the Alamo zone. And shortly therein, 15, 20 minutes later, I hear this crash, boom, right through the gate. The back gate is just blown open. And they had some type of semi-military half-ass Jeep. I don't know where it was. It wasn't one of ours, but where they had just blown right through the gate and in rushed all the terrorists. And I said, man, there must be about 50 of them at least. And when you get in the book, you'll see there's pictures of them, of the ones that were there. So you can see what they're wearing. And they had just recently attacked and taken over the Armish Mag, which is a military compound that the American military and the Army, for the most part, dealt with the Shahs. And they had joint training and joint armory. So when they hit that armory and the guards that were there capitulated and just said, it's yours. They walked away from like a National Guard armory and just gave it to these terrorists. I mean, it was similar to what Biden did with billions of dollars of stuff to the Taliban over in Afghanistan. It's just insanity. And I said, here you go, Christmas, guys. So anyway, they busted a gate open and most of them ran over into the PXs, just started looting and shooting and everything that they could get. The rest of them were trying to check our doors and our windows. They did not know that we were in there. I guess they had an inkling maybe, but trying to get into the locks and the doors. And it's just a matter of time before, Steve, you just say, they're going to find out we're in here and then we're going to have a problem. And, sooner or later, they realized they either saw movement or shadows, whatever. They realized that, or they had nothing else to do because they just tore the hell out of the PX. So they wanted to get in the restaurant. So they started busting in and trying to get through the doors that we locked in. And it was that point that Manachi talked with them in Farsi and found out who they were and what they were. And he gave us the information we needed to make our situation report. And he says, Sergeant Ken, he said, you cannot allow, these are communist Muslims that hate the Shah, hate America. He says, if they come in into this attack, he said, they will kill you. They will kill all of us. It will not be good for us. So basically they didn't, or dictated the terms and I had no guidance on my mission to authorize orders to surrender. My last orders were a Sergeant E5.
And your last orders were, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
The last orders were that nobody gets through that gate, even at the gunpoint. And I said, especially at the gunpoint. So we had to protect that funnel, that fatal funnel right there. I called the other two Marines together and I said, hey guys, here's what it is. Now one's a sergeant and one's a corporal. And I said, here's the way it is. And I had the rank, so or it just came to natural leadership. I don't know how it went. And we said, here's the situation. Do you hear what Menashe just said? He goes, yeah. I said, I don't know where we're going to go with this. I said, maybe we can start to negotiate with these guys out there. And as they did, they started shooting through the windows and shooting through the doors and the locks. So we had to get everybody in the back into the freezer area. It was probably the most ballistically safe place for all the non-combatants. And we just stood our ground in air, and eventually got to a point where they shot the lock out of the door. And when they were trying to come through, they put their hand through the door. That's when we finally just said, okay, that's enough. We opened fire. So now we're in a firefight with these guys. And there's like 30 or 40 of them. And we surprised them with when we jumped on them first. And the next thing you know is it's a firefight back and forth where they're shooting the living shit out of this place. You're talking about 20 or 30 of them, all of them having sub guns, 30 caliber guns or Belgian FN 308 caliber. And we're hunkered down, hiding under tables and then barricade ourselves. We jump back up and we fire back out at them. We drop about 6 or 8 of them. So we go back and forth for about almost an hour this way. They're firing and maneuvering, and they're in a fatal funnel. They can't get to us. And a lot of them, they just didn't realize that it's not militarily or tactically trained. They were taking a lot of casualties. But it got to a point where sooner or later, they were going to overrun us. Basically, when we got down to maybe 8-10 rounds each in our shotgun, we took an assessment of it. And then also our handguns and saying another 1 or 2 assaults and, it's going to be down to hand, cold steel.
Yeah. How many rounds of ammo did each of you guys have?
I had about 300 on me.
300 shotgun rounds?
Yes, sir. We had the BDUs, and I just opened up boxes and shoved them in and dumped them in. So you went from you didn't even know where you were. We had a Remington 870P, the police folding shotguns, 8 in the tube and 1 in the chamber, and I just remember firing. They said, okay, that's a double-aught buck. I mean, that's number 9 skeet. Bam! I said, oh, that's a slug. You better be holding on to that, dog.
You're not kidding.
Oh yeah, I think all 3 of them. If I remember, I had the stock extended because that's what gave you your lean in torque to counter the shot. Mm-hmm. But if you folded it forward, then it was just a pistol grip. And I mean, that's nice. But, yeah, well, that's great if you're just gonna put point, spray, and pray. But if you had want to shoot directly at someone, you'd want that thing in your shoulder, and tight. Especially when you're shooting 8-10 at a time.
You mentioned handgun. What'd you have?
Smith & Wesson 19, 357, hollow
that's
point.
A revolver.
Yeah, yes, that's a revolver at the time. Yeah, and they were in automatics. They were 1978. What can I tell you? 79. That's what they got. It's a good round. It's just I'd prefer. Yeah, I'd prefer something in the automatic semi-auto range that gives me 15 rounds and another reload magazine rather than a speed loader and pop it in and get up. But I took what I had. So we knew that it was going to be tough. To our surprise, they got around up onto the roof, cut through the barbed wire, and came around to get into the side. And I noticed a guy walking along the wall. And now he's in between me and the gate, and I can't shoot him. He's not in line of fire. But anyway, he comes around, and he's trying to check the doors and check the windows, see if there's another place, another access in. And there's a service gate where they make deliveries and stuff in the back, but he hadn't gone that way. And just as he came around the corner, I put my shotgun out the window, broken window, and told him to halt. And we was like at a Mexican standoff. He's 10 feet away, literally. And it was weird because he's carrying, in the book I'll talk about, a bandolier of 308 rounds. And he's carrying an Uzi. And what smacked ass is this? Yeah, really. Yeah. And the way I make fun of him because he looks like only older people would realize that the old Frito Bandito with the mustache and the big head that was on the Frito-Lay commercial. But he had a big old mustache. So I nicknamed him Mustacha. It's just something Marines do. We make fun. We have, sarcasm, and that's what we do with it.
Yep.
So I was just locked onto him, and he couldn't move, and I didn't move, and I just said, "You speak English?" He said, "A little." And I said, "Look, I don't know who you are, I don't know what you are, I don't know what you need, but I said, right now, You're at the end of my gun. We have non-combatants in here, Americans, your people, my people, bunch of mixed people. They have nothing to do with this fight. I'll make a deal with you. You let them go. They get out of here. I'll surrender myself and my other Marines, and you have our equipment. That's the only way it's going to go. There's no other way. Other than that, we just shoot it out. And he said, what if I don't make a deal with you? I said, I'm going to blow your head off. And I'm telling you, Steve, it was 10 feet away, and I was praying to God that he would take this deal. Mm-hmm. You can see the look in his eyes. He's saying, there's no way he's going to move. He could never reach for his gun. It was just, I could be looking the other way, and I'd have killed him. So he says, he does this number, and he calls another guy over at the time. And at the moment, I said, what are you, crazy? And he spoke Farsi with the guy, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And he's saying, I'll take your deal. And I'm telling you, to this day, when I talk about that book, I tell you, at the very end of the book, it says, this book is about miracles. And there's at least 6 miracles that have to line up directly on time the way it's going to be for it to happen. Other than that, I'm dead. It never gels. And if anybody ever reads those books and finds another coincidence in there that could be a miracle, please contact me. I'd love to, to talk to you about it and see if it is, because it was divine intervention at that time. So I held him at gunpoint called Henry and Jack over, and I said, hey, here's the way it's going to be. And they're looking at him, and I'm saying, why is he still alive? I said, because he's our meal ticket out of here. And he says, why don't you just make his head a red mist? I said, then we die, Jack. It's that simple. This is our only way out. I said, what's going to happen is you're going to go over there and you're going to get over top of the transom on the back door. And one by one, we're going to let our non-combatants out. They can be checked. They can be frisked, but they're going to go out and down the Kuchibajan gate. They're going to be gone. And I said, if one of them steps out of line, fondles one of the American women or any other women, okay, I said, you shoot them right in the face. And this Mustafa guy hears it. I said, you understand that? I said, you check them for weapons, and they're gone. Then we'll close the doors. We'll unbarricade the doors. You can come in. No more of your people die. No more of my people die. I said, you get everything. You get my Marines. You get my Marines. You get all of our equipment, and you're the hero. Nobody else dies. And again, he said, that might be a good deal. I said, well, you take it, because you ain't going to get anything better besides just lead in the face. And you better make a decision, because this shotgun's getting mighty friggin' heavy. So anyway, we fast forward, and they did. One by one, they let him out. And the important thing was that even in my special edition of the book, is that I was really glad, besides just being alive, is that making that deal, is that 2 of the women that were there were intelligence officers or worked for one of the alphabet agencies. And for them to get captured and their ID to be eventually found out and disclosed, right? I couldn't imagine how bad that's going to go for them. They'd be trophies and a half. You know what I mean? So I said, we got to get them out of here, no matter how.
How many people got out?
22. Wow. 22. Probably about 8 Americans. The rest were foreign service local employees. And then it was just myself, my other 2 Marines. So we let the door open, and like I said, it's one of the worst failures I've ever had in my life. And you read it in the book. Till this day, it's one of the emotional things that bothers me. My buddy Minachi, that was the waiter in there that served me that breakfast that morning, he didn't get in line with the other people to get out of there. He hid himself in a little linen closet on the side. So when the 3 of us, we had taken all our equipment off, broke our antennas on our radios, bashed our shotguns, destroyed everything we could. No matter what we had, opened up my 357, banged the cylinder so you couldn't close it, made everything useless, put it in a big pile in front of in the middle of the room, and just stood there with our hands up. I had asked Manachi how do you say surrender in Farsi. And he was saying Taslim Koni. So that we were chanting that when they kicked through the door. And just as they kicked through the door, the one guy looked at me, and he had a little subgun. He squeezed off a couple rounds, and just as he squeezed those off, here's Manachi, that was standing in the linen closet, stepped right in front of the blast and took all the rounds right in his chest. He fell down, and I screamed, oh my God, no. And I grabbed hold of him, and he just lays down there, and you could just see the life just drain out of his eyes. His eyes went from bright to dull to opaque, and they just stayed open. And I'm holding him. I see the blood, and I'm looking at this guy like this. And I know that how many times I wrote this or talk about it is that I just wanted to stand up and chew this guy's face off. I wanted to kill him so freaking bad. But I'm just sitting there looking at Menachie, and I said, I can't believe it. I mean, I failed. We took a head count to begin with of how many we had under our responsibility. I failed to tell the other Marines to count the ones leaving. You didn't figure that you had to count them going out. Here's a door out. Boom. And with everything else going on and not having any sleep for 20 hours, I mean, there's no excuse for it. It's I failed in my mission to make sure to account for every swinging dick that left that room. And there was one left. Not only that, but he steps right in front of the 1 second that it would take to take those 3 or 4 rounds, and it would have hit me. You know? And I said, my God. But anyway, that's not here or there, buddy.
I got to say, Ken, I know you consider it a failure, but there's 22 people alive after that event that I'm pretty sure they're calling you a hero, and thank you for getting them out of there.
Then that comes down later on the road. Well, it would be a miss for me to try to tell you now, but I mean, what happens here is that later on in my life, some of those people and their grandsons and granddaughters write me letters and say thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
That tears me up. They would put Ken Kraus, Lansdale, Pennsylvania. That's it. A town. And then not a street or anything like that. And then letters and Christmas cards, Hanukkah cards, holidays, cards like that. My mom had a shoebox full of them. And I still got a few of them. My sisters keep them. And we got them in a scrapbook. And saying, you don't know me, but I had a daughter, et cetera, and you saved my mom. I never met you, but here's the pictures of me and my daughter now, which would have been her granddaughter. They wouldn't have been alive if you hadn't done what you did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's better than any medal you could ever receive, in my opinion.
But
wow. That's just showing you're having a positive impact on lives. I mean, not just a positive impact. You save lives, and look at the lineage that came out of those lives. And for them to appreciate what you did and recognize you just by sending a simple letter. I know that sounds, I don't know, it might sound like a big deal, but when you're in your shoes, I'm sure it's still a big deal to this day. You know, it could cause you to get emotional. If you start getting emotional, I'll get emotional. So don't.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I hear you. So basically the Mustache walks in and sees, they take the other 2 Marines outside. They start slapping them around and beating them up a little bit. He takes a look at all the equipment and sees everything, and he just is infuriated that this is the way we negotiate, right? I said, yeah. And it made him look stupid in front of his men. He had given everything up and the other people got away. And yes, I said, you're going to get my Marines and my equipment and everything else. I didn't tell you what condition they're going to be in. Well, and that was me running my Joe Pesci mouth. And then I took one hell of an ass beating there, busted the teeth. They broke some ribs, broke my sacrum coccyx bone, beat me unconscious basically. In the book, you'll get into more details about it. And then he actually picks up a shotgun. And the irony of this is, Stephen, when he picks up the shotgun and I'm looking at him, my eyes cut, I'm all beat up. I can't breathe because my ribs are cracked. And he picked up and I looked at it and I said, that's my freaking shotgun. I could tell because of the way I beat the barrel and bent the barrel, plus on the nib, I broke the nib off of it, the little bead at the front of it. And I looked at it and I said, he's going to shoot me. He's going to shoot me with my own shotgun. I said, well, I didn't realize it that he had already found a round or 2, a shotgun shell in the flak jackets that they had taken off the other Marines and put it in there. And now he's holding that shotgun. He doesn't have the shoulder stock in place. He's just holding it with the pistol grip. And as he looks at it, he's looking at me and he just brings it around. I seen his finger going to the trigger. And I go, you're going to get shot. And bam! That's all I heard. I don't remember feeling it. Don't remember nothing. It's just like a shockwave come over me. And I don't even know if that's what actually happened. That's the only thing I can remember that would have happened. And the blast hit me, and I still have my flak jacket on until this day. I got a scar on my stomach that's about a foot long. It looks like they stitched me up like an NFL football. It's horrible. I don't know what happened after that. I was drug outside and thrown in the back of a ambulance or something, And I remember the last thing I remember seeing is Jack and Stanley standing up with their hands behind their head up against the wall, and as if they were going to be executed. And that last prayer was, I was saying, Lord, please, please don't let them get shot. Don't, I already lost Minachi today. I'm probably going to die here, but I'm the one that talked them into giving them orders to surrender. And if they get, shot, it'd be murder. And it's just weird shit goes through your head with all that stuff. I passed out.
Right.
So the next step is where I wake up in the hospital.
All right. We've been going for a good hour now, Ken. And what I'd like to do is call a halt to today's portion of the interview. Talk about a cliffhanger, man. I've got to get up and walk around a little bit just because you just get amped up hearing these kind of stories and the way our fellow Americans are being treated who are just simply trying to do a job and protect other people. You okay with coming back tomorrow?
Let me see. Yes, absolutely.
Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us. You got to come back and hear the rest of the story. And I'm not sure if it's going to be another 1 or 2 episodes that go along with this because we're just scratching the surface here. Again, true American hero and patriot right there in front of you. Y'all owe him a debt of gratitude. He's still flying the flag, still living up to what we expect of people in our country. He and I have been exchanging a couple funny text messages and emails back and forth. And I got to say, I agree with everything he says. But until tomorrow, can't wait to bring you back. We're going to get right back into what's going on with Ken over in Tehran when he's already been shot and hopefully been taken to a hospital. So, ladies and gentlemen, until tomorrow, thank you very much. May God bless. See you then.
Thank you, Steve.